Okay, so let's now do the AI depth map. I want to explain this properly to you, and I want to explain the gotchas with this tool so that you can use it to its fullest. Now, what I'm going to do is explain first of all what a tool does. What a tool does is generates a map. Let me turn this on. It generates a depth map that says to whichever node it's on to say, here is where you can cause your effect to have an effect on the image. That's all it does in general. So it's a kind of like saying within these limits, you can do whatever you want to do based on that grayscale. Whatever is white is where the effect is happening, and it gradually goes off into gray. There's less effect. And you can have that it has a very sharp fall off where you can have only white and everything in the background black. But we're going to get into that in a moment. I want to show you one of the most important things you need to know about this tool when you're using it. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself fighting the tool and not understanding why it's working the way it's working. Now, how this tool works is that you can refine the map, right? You can refine the map, the near and the far. I'm going to explain this better for you, but just trying to show you basically how this tool works, right? Okay, but here's the kicker. If this is turned off, you come in, let me turn this off. You come in and you set your lift, your gain, and you got your gamma. Those three equals these three once this is turned off. So what's happening now is this tool being on looks at your luminance in your image and says, I'm going to use that to then go back and tell you where you can do your color grading. Let me show you how that happens. So now we're looking at the Luma mat. Let's say, the far, I bring in closer, and again, I make it shorter. So I am only focusing on the guy there in the middle. So there, and I bring that a bit back, and then the gamma. Yeah, so now the effect, whatever color grading I would do now is going to affect here the most because it's the most whitest, and here the most, and then it falls off. So when I go over to here, let me turn this off. The tool is still on, but whenever I make any changes now, you see, it's happening there. It isn't affecting the things in the back as much because of the fall off. So when I go back to here and I say, let me change the fall off, you can see it's affecting it more or less, but also it's affecting just the general luminance of the image as you see on screen and in the vector scope. For this tool to act more independent, you have to turn this on. The moment you turn this on, it's going to say, hey, I'm going to ignore the luminance that's coming out of the color corrector, and I'm going to use my own luminance to tell you where you can do your color grading. So let's turn that on. One thing I want to do before I turn that on, I want you to see something. This luminance that I'm doing here, it's a kind of looping on itself. While this is on, what it's saying is, I'm going to, as I said before, I'm going to take the luminance that I see you have in your corrector. It's going to inform me, and then I'm going to tell you back where your effect can be done, your color grade. I do two separate things here on two different palettes, so I could kind of keep them separate in terms of just to let you see visually, like here I do a luminance change, and over here I do an actual color grade. So you can see that. See, it mostly affects the front because of the depth map that is here, you see? Okay, now, when I turn off this tool, let me turn this like this, you're going to notice the jump in the waveforms, but also on the screen, because the depth map is going to stop informing it, the color grade, where it can have its effects happen. And it's going to affect more of the image, aka it's going to act the way we expect it to act in a normal way. Turn that off, you see? So now it's acting without any kind of input from the depth map saying where it can and cannot. So this is, I think, one of the biggest gotchas when you using the tool. I don't see no one explaining this in tutorials, but this is so key, fundamental to you understanding, because once this is off, it only gets its information from the corrector itself, and that becomes more difficult for you to use the depth map tool in a creative way. So let's go now and turn this on. Now, as I said, as I turn this on, then it gets its depth from itself where I can define it. Let's turn this on. Now the tool is going to act the way you expect it to act. Let me turn this on. So now, let me go here. So now as I move this, let me reset the color grade so we can look at just a black and white image. So now as I move this, it works the way I expect. This is the far plane all the way in the back. I'm saying what is the furthest that this map will reach, and this says what's the nearest this map will reach. And the gamma is the middle point, as you can see. So in that way, we have now an independent way of defining where this color grade is going to happen. So let me turn this off. And now the color grade, and this is more precise, we don't change our luminance of the image, but we are just informing the corrector where its effect can happen. And that's the key difference. This here isn't changing your luminance. It is only saying where the effect that this has done can happen. If I reset this, and as I'm going to show you again, you notice it isn't changing the luminance. It is only affecting where the effect can happen. That's all it's doing, as you can see. Right? So now I'm going to tell it, I want you only to dim the stuff. What's white is where the effect is going to happen. I want you to dim the stuff that's in the back, behind this guy, back here. Okay? Now, when we turn off this, we go over here. See, now we're only affecting in the back. This is much more precise than if we was relying on the tool itself to get the information from the corrector. I hope this makes sense to you. This is the small nuance that makes the key difference between you using the tool and understand what it's doing from it just doing whatever it's doing and you're confused as to why. Now, how can we move this from back there to the front? We do that with, before going to that, let me do something here so you can see it visually. I move the darkness up. Now, why would we want to, say for instance, if we wanted to animate this, what good could this do to us? Because we have an animation here. Imagine if you have a shot where they want to give the impression as if the room is darkening. So you can go from here and you could go click, 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 click. And like that, you can have a room where the lights are turning out. And this looks real. This looks like this guy is actually in the dark, because the depth map is getting all its information from here. And we aren't adjusting the exposure at all. I think that's key in this whole thing. And then we can go and make any kind of adjustments we want to the tool to determine how dark or how bright the background is. This here invert, I think it speaks for itself. I could turn the place where the effect is going to happen. I can switch it around so the foreground is now where it's going to get dark by flipping the selection around. Turn that off. Now you see we have control over the foreground and not affecting the background. Okay. Now let's look at it a little differently now. Look at it as the background. We're going to say the background is this node and the foreground is this node. What we're going to do is we're going to move this. It says isolate specific depth. What does that do? It allows, it was on, I should have had it off, but what it allows is for you to change where you are having this effect happening in the scene. So it's a let's say there's a rectangle, and that rectangle is moving from the front to the back. And wherever it falls, there's where the depth map is going to have the effect. So we can move the entire region of the map that we created here, how broad or how small it is. Here we are just determining how, let me say, how far it is going forward and backwards, the plane. And then here we're saying where it sits, where this thing that we've created sits. So we can move it all the way to the back, or we can move it all the way to the front. Now the tolerance, what the tolerance is saying is it's saying I want to determine how broad. First, this is the tolerance on low, and this is the tolerance on high. So it's just making it wider, making this section wider, but evenly from the middle, go out on both sides. So what you're going to see is the tolerance is changing the width of that effect, which is fine-tuning it even more. So we do have a far and near, but within that far and near, we are saying we are going to make it even thinner or broader, but within that far and near. And then we are going to say we're going to move that entire depth map either back or forward. I hope this makes it clear, as you can see on screen. So if we turn this on, I can start to darken a certain part just in front of him, or I can move it just to hit him exactly. You see? Or I can put him in the dark. So in that way, the effect, you can also animate that. So you can have something that goes over the screen like that as a strobe or whatever. So in this way, this could help you to also be creative. That I'm trying to show you the technical and also the creative aspect, so you could know what else you can do with it. So it doesn't necessarily have to stay as is. Hope that makes sense. Okay, now we have map finesse. Now this shot isn't a really good way. Oh, one last thing I almost forget, the softness. I think this goes without saying. If you look at the depth map, how soft the edge is. That's all it does. So it has a nicer fall off. That's just, I mean, softness, we don't really need to explain that exactly. So we change the depth. I think you always need to have a softness in anything you do in color grading so that it falls off beautifully. So we have here, and one thing we didn't do, so we go to this spot. So now we're saying, here's where the effect is going to happen. Let's say we turn back up the exposure, but in that space, we want to do the color grade, because that's what it's all about. So now we can have this kind of effect happening. So now we just have that color grade happening within the map we created. And we can say maybe we want it a little deeper in the shot, behind him, or we want it in front of him. So that's the kind of power you get. And then you can, the tolerance, you're making it broader or thinner. So now we have this a bit broader. This is a smaller slit. So it's now thinner. As we bring the tolerance down, we could get a little broader there. So now we have that, and we change the depth where it is happening, right on top of him. And right on top of him, we can go and we can increase the exposure, because the map is saying only within that region, any effect from this corrector can happen. So that is that. Now, map finesse. Map finesse has to do with, but this isn't a good image to show that, is you can have a person, for instance, with hair. If you have loose hair, strands of hair, you use this to get better edges. Let me reset this, and reset this. If you had hair here, you'd be able to go in and semi-transparent things, you'd be able to tighten that up, blend it out, get better edges if so needed. So this isn't a good shot, but you can see the edge of him is getting that effect because it understands where our edge is and it wants things to look naturally and blend with each other. So you can play with this. I think this is pretty straightforward because it's a very visual aspect of it. There's nothing as technical as the rest. Advance. Now, here's something really neat. With automatic, let me turn this off. The advanced setting says, let me move this up. So what the advanced setting says is, let me move this down so we can see it a bit more. The advanced settings have a few options. Process entire frame. What's happening is if it's an automatic, it says, I'm going to let DaVinci Resolve tell me where actually video footage is coming from on that screen, because you can have footage that has bars above and underneath, and DaVinci Resolve can turn and say, I know exactly where actually is footage and where actually just black bars. So you can have footage that doesn't have all the information all the way to the top and the bottom. Now, process entire frame, I think it goes without saying based on what I just said, it's going to even process the black part of the image, which then affects your depth map, I would think. I don't have no footage that does that to give that example, but this is what happened. It processes the entire image. Auto is saying, I'm going to take the input that DaVinci Resolve tells me where pixels are, that is actual image, but also I'm going to give you the option to crop if so needed. Let me zoom out so we can show the crop. So I can crop the image, as you can see, you see it from, and this is purely the effect. So it crops it. It might be able to be used as a creative effect. As you can see, it can be animated. You can end up, what you could do, say for instance, you have a series of them together in a parallel node, and you can do different things with this cropping. For instance, you know, there's always options. Once it has a animation button, creativity is always around the corner. And the same for top and bottom. I think that goes without saying. And here you have manual, which is, I'm not going to take any input from DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to let you 100% define what is actual footage and what is actually not. So that's what our advanced section does. Okay, but this isn't all about this is all that there is to know about this plugin. Here's another extremely important gotcha. When you right click on top of this object, OFX Alpha, these two options are turned on by default. What they do, the first one says by enabling it, the alpha channel from this tool, now let me reset this down here. Go down here and put this on automatic. Okay. So now what happens is tools such as your Windows work the way that you expect it to work on top of the footage. It is combining and working with, let me turn off the, let me first do this and then open this up, open this a bit. Yeah. Okay. So now what is happening is it's not only saying I'm going to use the depth map, but your other tools such as these masks is going to also determine where that effect is on the entire screen. So just the way how the masks work in general, or I can flip it and it then works on the outside, as you can see. Let me turn this off. So you also have that level of creativity. If you turn this off, they aren't working together in the same way. Now, it was very subtle, but you can see that, let me do it a little different. Go in here, change this. This is enabled. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the back. So I'm going to take target depth and tolerance, a bit smaller. So now you can see it here. Let's turn this off. So it's in the back, as you can see. It's all the way in the back. Let's make it a bit more pronounced. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to turn the alpha off. I turn on this. they work now differently with each other. Whereas with it on, it is looking at the depth map to help create that look, but now it's just punching a hole through it. Don't care the depth itself. You can see it affecting all up here. Let's turn that on. You see? So it's affecting all depths. It's just working as it normally does, even with the AI depth map on. So let's hide this. You see, it's affecting the entire thing. So when I go and I turn this on, it's going to take note of the depth that is being produced by the depth map. I think this is also very important for you to know. Could be that creatively you want to turn it off, but you now know how that affects each other. And I think if you're using the AI depth map, I would expect you to want to use that depth. And then this gives you another layer of creativity where, you see? So even with the target depth and a window, you can have it move in depth, but still represent or respect the window that is built into it. That could create a look that is just so unique, and that gives you new options. So I think that's also a very important thing, not just from a technical standpoint, but a creative standpoint. Now, they also have this here, use for mixing. When use for mixing is off, it does not affect the depth. The depth isn't working with the node. Now, let me explain one little thing so you get that part. The enable alpha and this enable alpha allows it to pass out an alpha channel to another node that it can use. So thereby allowing you to input the depth map to affect another node. Let's go here. I think I should have explained that first, but let me do that now. So me turning this on and off, turn off both of them. But when it's enabled, it allows for the alpha from this node, from the depth map, to be piped through to another tool and also function. Let me go to here and then let me do this. Just do something crazy like that. And let me go to here. As you can see, there is a map there. Let's invert it. So now I can go on top of this one, and by driving this, we are getting something quite unique because the alpha from here is pushing through to this because we have it enabled. So the alpha channel from here is pushing through to this also. So you have where we can go, and let's take a look here. One moment, the depth. So the depth, as you can see, the depth changes, and so does the effect here from this one because the depth is changing. Let me do that again. As you can see, it moved from the background to the foreground, background to the foreground. And if we turn this off, there's no depth. This has no depth. It just is overlaid. So these are the key things. This tool is insanely powerful, but you just need to know these little nuances. So let's turn that back on. And now it does as we would expect it, or how we would hope it to function. I hope this makes it even more clear on how this tool can help you do very, very creative things, how it can help you to select certain depths in your shot, change the exposure. You can add contrast to a shot just in the way you want at a certain depth. So it's quite quite powerful. One of the first things you're going to see up here in the depth map is this setting quality. What it's used for is when you're busy just doing your tweaks, you want to put it on faster because then it renders faster for you. Your changes, the updates will come quicker because the depth map generation is very computer or processor intensive. So you want to have it on faster, but once you finish and you're like, yes, I have the look that I want, then you can put it on better. And then that's your final render of all the stuff that you're doing. So that's very important to use. So recap, put it on faster when you're coming in to do your thing and get your idea, look development. And once you're done, put it on better and everything else works the same. I think you now know how you can use this tool in many, many ways. This is how I think a person should approach these tools, knowing all the ins and outs and then getting creative with it. So I'll see you in the next tutorial where I go into the other tools on the color tab.